Now, finally joining the show. I am so excited to talk to you, man.
The studio looks amazing, so I can't wait. I mean, when you make a play, all I want to do is scream and flex. I was loving every part of being an underdog and having that underdog mentality. You're in the big house, the crowd gets up and you get them going. You get that rush through your veins. Yeah. It's something that I desired. All we wanted to do was beat Ohio State. I think on and off the field, I really crossed off all the boxes.
Welcome into episode 2 of Hutch, brought to you by PFF and presented by Cash App. Here we look at his freshman, sophomore, and junior seasons, his upbringing there at the University of Michigan, talking to Don Brown, defense coordinator, former teammates Kwity Paye and Chase Winovich, really just how he grew from freshman to junior year all the way up to his injury his junior season and the adversity he faced that offseason. Let's get it.
The Hutch podcast is brought to you by Cash App. Cash App is the easiest way to send, spend, and save your money. You can send or request money from your friends when they owe you for dinner, drinks, literally anything. Besides just sending money back and forth, with Cash App, you can invest in stocks with as little as $1, as well as buy, sell, and send Bitcoin instantly. It's really that easy. Cash App also lets you design your own debit card completely free to spend money anywhere you'd like. Cash App will laser print it and mail it to you all for free. And the card comes with free discounts at your favorite places called Boosts. Sign up for Cash App today using referral code HUTCHPOD, which gives new users $15, and Cash App will set aside $10 for each sign up to go towards the Chad Tough Foundation. The more people that use the code HUTCHPOD when registering not only get $15 for free, but you're also helping support the Chad Tough Foundation. The Chad Tough Foundation funds the most innovative, promising research on DIPG, which is underfunded compared to most cancers. The mission of the Chad Tough Foundation is to inspire and fund game-changing research to discover effective treatments for pediatric brain cancer, with an emphasis on DIPG. Download Cash App on the App Store or Google Play Store today.
Let's get to freshman year. Let's talk about that season specifically and those early practices. You mentioned like finding your composure. I'd love to hear stories or kind of what that was like, right? Your dad had brought up to me, coaches were shocked at how much effort you were putting in the weight room at such a young age. You're in your first few times in the gym.
He's at Michigan as a true freshman, and he's giving this level of effort that he's always given. And one of the coaches says, "Do you always try this hard?" I mean, this is just working out. And they see this level of, no matter what drill it is, even though it's, in June, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give everything I've got. And to be honest, it kind of surprised me that it surprised them.
I came in pretty developed, and even practicing, I think I was rolling with the twos when I got in there. Mm-hmm. And so, but in my head, I didn't really know what was going on. I was just out there almost improvising. And but I had a good first camp, and it was definitely, it's hard though. Freshman year, I think, is just, it's the hardest year out of any year because you don't know what you're getting into, and I wanted to play more, but I had Chase and Rashan ahead of me. I'm like, crap, and I played in every game, but it was very hard mentally with school, with football. I think for every athlete, for sure. What
were some of the classes you were taking early on? Like, what did you enter in? What was your major when you went in?
Yeah, I was in kinesiology, but I was in the movement science portion of it, and that was like the hardest portion. That was the hardest sect in kinesiology, and it was kicking my ass a little bit at first. I think my freshman year, definitely with the academics, I had an all right GPA, but in terms of balancing football with school, I was struggling. I was really struggling.
Talk me through a typical day freshman year, right? Is it 5 a.m. workouts, classes, then practices, or what does the day look like?
So the scheduling my freshman year, Coach Harbaugh had Monday, Tuesday were 6 a.m. workouts, and then I had to go to pre-calc after that.
Oh my gosh.
And they say that Michigan math just hits a little bit different. And you got class all morning and then you got practice after that. And so Tuesdays were that struggle day, and then you got to do those pre-calc problems. And I got an A in pre-calc in high school, and then I take it at Michigan, and I'm getting like we got this team homework we're doing. I'm failing that, but I ended up making it out with like a C+. So
nice.
We passed.
That's all we need. That's all we need. What were some of the goals from the coaches, right? I think, Matt, did they want you to add weight? What were they wanting you to do that season? Because you play a lot that year, right? You don't have a redshirt season.
Yeah.
I think there was like 3 or 4 games where you play over 20 snaps and like actually have experience as a true freshman.
He was not an All-American when he was a freshman, but everything you heard from day one when you talked to the coaches, there were just 2 words that every coach used: hard work. And the guy it's in his DNA. I didn't know him when he was in grade school, but I'm assuming he was a grinder when he was in grade school. It just, that's where we started, and it was fun watching him progress.
Following Michigan for as long as you have, John, I would love to hear what your early impressions were of him, this 4-star recruit that does play a lot his true freshman season, starts to really get involved on the defense as a rotational player in 2019. What were some of your early impressions of Aidan, whether that was through watching him play or even off the field, having conversations with him and other players?
Well, just on the field, I said this in some of our broadcasts that I thought he was going to be a combination of a Chase Winovich, who played with great heart, great passion, great effort, but also compared with like a Rashan Gary and the skill set and talent that Rashan had. Now, if you could have put Chase's heart in Rashan, you would get what we're seeing right now and who we're talking about, and that's Aidan Hutchinson. Every practice, every game, every time he's in the weight room, in the meeting rooms, it is all business.
What were your first impressions or your early impressions of Aidan Hutchinson?
One, that I think he was going to be a great player because he was like a sponge. He was out there and he was trying to learn everything he could learn from those guys you just mentioned. Not only that, but think about what's inside of Aidan Hutchinson to go to Michigan and knowing there's that legacy. He's got a name to live up to. He didn't shirk from that. He accepted it. He accepted that challenge and said, I am going to accept this challenge of being Chris Hutchinson's son, and I'm going to surpass the old man. That's not an easy thing to do for a young kid coming out of high school, but he did it. And then he does a great job of learning from those guys ahead of him, but still playing well enough so that you get a shot on the field. And that to me told me he's got all it takes now. It's just a matter of putting in the work, building your body, becoming, going from a high school senior to a young man, to become an adult, aged maturity. And then the leadership thing kicks in. Playing with the team, making those around you better, that's all part of the process. And you could tell early because of they call it flashes. Some guys flash. Aidan had flashed when he was a freshman. And you just knew when he had more opportunity, he was going to be even better. And that's, you knew it right away. I mean, this kid had a pedigree.
Those early practices, those early workouts, were they adamant about adding weight to your frame or playing you at a certain position? What were those conversations like?
Not really. I mean, I came in there at probably about 260, and it's probably about what I weigh right now.
For a big guy, sometimes those guys need to grow into their bodies. I never really remember him having to do that. It was like he showed up at Michigan and he looked a certain way. And obviously, there was more bulk there, but his body type didn't change. Like, he didn't show up as a baby deer that needed to get seasoned. He showed up ready to go right away. And he's basically a very similar style of player that he was when he was young, which, a lot of guys kind of go through the growth spurt and need the growth spurt so they can mature This guy maximized his potential almost from the get-go.
I was just really converting some of that fat to maybe muscle in terms of my freshman year,
the
my senior year.
Tostitos to muscle.
Right, that's right. A lot of those pizza rolls. But I mean, I came in like ready to play. So I mean, it was really just a matter of learning the game and you know, becoming a better pass rusher, a better player overall, and that comes with experience and playing snaps and all that. So it was never a question of gaining weight or losing weight or getting stronger. It was always just continue to learn the game.
What was your relationship with Coach Don Brown, the defensive coordinator there in that 2019 season? I think he was there in 2020 as well. Yeah. I had an opportunity to talk with him. He mentioned, he was like, whatever I did, I had to get him on the field, right? I'd play him at nose, I'd play him anywhere I could to make sure that we had our best, players on the field. And he was very appreciative, at least the conversations I had, about versatility, the effort, and just the willingness to do whatever it took.
I had him at all 4 positions in 2019 in different places where he was rushing the quarterback, could play the tight end side end, could play the open side end, could move in over the nose of the 3 and do some work there, can stand up and play outside linebacker like he did some this year. So, it's a guy with not only flexibility, tremendous position flexibility that you'll be able to do a tremendous amount with at the next level.
What was your relationship with him? Because I could see he was one of those first few coaches, right, that was really deploying you and having a lot of success with where he put you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm so grateful for Coach Brown and everything that he's done for my career. And when I was young, he was just finding ways to put me on the field. And I wasn't necessarily too happy about that. Obviously, you want to be on the edge, you want to be getting it, but we had so much talent on that defensive line. So I'm super grateful for him. And I know he's at Massachusetts now as a head coach. That's where his heart belongs, right there in Mass. But he was always great in my whole career, and definitely one of those guys that I'll never forget.
I think he mentioned one of my favorite quotes from him was something along the lines of, he was the same guy when you got there and when you left, like in terms of the effort and the work ethic and what you did in the weight room, what you did not practice. And that consistency, I think, does ring true with a lot of the conversations I've had with Coach Don, Coach Jim, I mean, a lot of those things. So did you play any scout team in those practices? I know freshmen, oftentimes playing scout team. Were you on any of these scout teams?
I mean, if you ask all my teammates, they'll say no. But I can remember one scout team rep I took when we were in fall camp. It wasn't great, but I took one, and then they took me out, and then I was never on scout.
What position
team
were you playing on scout team?
It was just DN. And they told me to just go upfield or something. So I did that, and then that was it.
Wow,
that was it for my scout team journey.
That's sensational. Who were some of the players on that team that 2018 team specifically that you developed relationships with, and who were some of your friends on that team?
I mean, if you look at some of the guys, I mean, Chase and Rashan were guys coming in that I watched, and definitely I would just literally just watch them and everything that they did. And we're in the meeting room. I mean, I got my eyes glued on what they're doing on the TV.
I'd say just his preparedness and his approach towards life is truly, it's inspiring even to me. I try to take inspiration and guidance from anything that I see that is like, wow, okay, maybe I can incorporate a little something of that into my game or how I view the world. For somebody young like himself, or it's pretty cool. And it's going to be awesome to see how that pans out into the NFL. But when it comes to his actual playing, I'd say just his frame, in general, like just his movement, it's hard to pinpoint one thing because he legitimately does a lot of things really well. And even when he was a freshman, like his just like physique, like coming in, like as a freshman wasn't where I started. Let's put it that way, and just the quickness and like just all these attributes combined. He's just a beast.
Those were guys coming in that definitely it's good when you're young and you have guys to look up to. And then I mean our defense was pretty nasty that year. We had D Bush in the middle, and D Bush is he's
a monster.
He's crazy, and he's so freaking good. And so we had Levert at corner. I mean, we had so much talent on defense. So I mean, it's always kind of been that way. with me at Michigan in terms of our defenses being so elite, and he's got a lot of great players on it. So it was good, definitely, going into that system and being with guys that were so talented.
What are some of the things that you felt you learned from either Chase Winovich or Rashan Gary, right? The two big guys on campus playing defensive end that year.
I don't think anything in specifically I can remember, but I mean, I was backing up Rashan, so I mean, I was always in his hip pocket, like watching what he did. I mean, because you go to a new college defense and you don't know any scheme, you don't know what a stunt step is, what that looks like. So I was literally just watching these guys in practice. If it was like an on-field walkthrough, literally watching the smallest details in order to kind of become, the player that I wanted to be.
Is that not the year, correct me if I'm wrong, that Devin Bush scuffs up the Michigan State logo?
Oh, yeah.
So this is kind of, you don't like play a ton in those rivalry games,
right,
but you do get an opportunity to see what it's like.
Yeah.
Talk about that moment specifically where Devin is scuffing up that logo and the boys are busting there in Michigan.
Dude, I mean, that moment was legendary.
I literally is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I only played one snap that game. I played one snap in that 2018 Michigan game, Michigan State game. But I mean, we didn't really see. I wasn't out there pregame, so I didn't really see it. But you're checking your phone pregame, and you're just changing some music, and I get this ESPN update saying like Devin Bush, blah blah blah. I click on it, I'm like, did he just do that in a rivalry game? Like, you know how much like pressure that adds? Like, if we don't win this game, like we're gonna get trolled. We're gonna get like it. I was watching on my phone. I'm like, we better win this damn game. And I mean, we ended up holding them to like under 100 yards of total offense. So I mean, I think we earned that one.
What was the conversations in the locker room like? Because Devin had to be seeing that on his phone too, right? Or what was going on?
No one's really talking about it because pregame everyone's pretty locked in. But when you see this stuff, it hadn't really been addressed. And then, but I mean, after the game, I mean, we all were laughing about it, and it's fun when you win. But if we were to lose that game, the conversations would definitely be different.
The added pressure is 100%. On offense, I know we talked a lot about the defensive players and guys, Rashan, Chase, you brought up Levert, Carlo Kemp, David Long. I mean, that defense was elite, like you said. Offensively, you probably had some opportunities in practice to go against some really good NFL talents on the offensive line. Michael Onwenu, Cesar Ruiz, Runyon, Bredesen. What were those battles like? That's kind of your first taste of college football one-on-ones or college football talent in those practices, and all these guys are going on to the NFL. What were some of those moments like?
Yeah, I mean, that O-line that we had, I think it was my freshman and sophomore year, because most of them left my junior year. But I mean, they were nasty, and Big Mike Onwenu, Caesar, Runyon. I mean, Ben Brett. I mean, there were so many guys that I mean, I'm pretty sure they all got drafted too, and it was like, they were all so talented, and it definitely made me a better player because I definitely wasn't winning every rep against them, and but it made me learn at a young age, learn quick in order to if you want to fight with the big boys, you better learn quick. So that's something that I definitely had to do, and it definitely made me a better player a lot faster.
We'll probably get into this as we talk more about kind of the later seasons and as you get more opportunity, but I feel like you bring up like this nastiness, right, of the offensive line and all that stuff. Because I think with you, I see on tape polish and high effort, this motor, this crazy like work ethic, but the nastiness is something you kind of have to like grow, right? Grow into it. When did you feel like that became a part of your game, and like how important is that, right? How important is that mentality as part of your game?
Man, I think it was like my sophomore year in spring ball. I got in like 2 fights, and
with who? Come on, I need names here.
I mean, sometimes someone else got in a fight, and then you just kind of jump in it. But I mean, you definitely got to be nasty to succeed at that next level, and if that means getting in a couple fights at practice, then so be it. But I mean, definitely you got to turn that switch on, and sometimes when you got that switch on and you're in practice and you're hitting dudes, you're rushing the passer, like you kind of get lost in it a little bit, and that's sometimes I let my emotions get the best of me, but I've definitely, I'm still nasty, but I don't get in too many fights anymore. Not last season.
Kind of wrapping up the freshman season, and I want to get into sophomore year as well. You played more than 20 snaps. I have my notes here: Western Michigan, Nebraska, Maryland, Florida. All opportunities for you to really see the field, whether it be due to injury or whatever the score was. Any of those games stand out to you as kind of on the football field, not in practice, where you really started to feel comfortable playing, for the University of Michigan?
Yeah, I would say the Nebraska game, because I had that safety that I got, and that was like the biggest play of my freshman year, and it was a play that it was my first ever big play, and it was something that definitely I'll never forget. And I can remember jumping up on the sideline, everyone's like dapping me up and stuff, because it was my first ever play, not tackle, but first ever big play that I made, and man, that was I just knew I wanted to do that a lot more times, just because of the way it made you feel. When you made that big play, you're in the big house, the crowd gets up, and you get them going. You get that rush through your veins, and it's something that I desired time in and time out.
You mentioned celebrations, and obviously that's kind of your first opportunity to throw one out. I feel like I've watched a lot of your tape and a lot of the broadcast film as well, where you're able to see some of the celebrations. I feel like you have it's a mixed bag, right? I think you never know what's going to come out. There's one where you kind of do the Conor McGregor. Yeah. There's one that I think, my favorite one that I think is your go-to is just to jump up and down and throw your arms around. That's kind of your go-to. Have you thought about celebrations in the NFL, and how has that celebration process really progressed over the course of your career?
Yeah, I have been looking for a staple, but and usually I got something in my head going into a game, and then when you make a play, all I want to do is scream and flex because you're so excited and you got so much emotion. So in that Rutgers game when I did the McGregor walk, I was literally about to start screaming and shouting, and you could see me. I'm like this, and then I do the walk because that's my first instinct. This is just because I'm so damn excited. But definitely, I'm looking for a staple in the NFL. I messed around this year with a couple different things, but definitely still looking for the one.
Don't be afraid to keep it fresh though. Because the staple celebration is obviously great, and you can get that all patented and stuff like that. But I think the keeping it fresh when you just get a random tackle for loss and you're just waving around. I think that's that raw energy. The spontaneity of it is fantastic. Let's move to your sophomore year. You play a ton.
2019, man, he stepped up. He had some guys take off to the NFL with Winovich leading off the edge. He was had to come in and fill some shoes, and he did a heck of a job. I was looking up his stats this past year, and then I know he had around 36, 37 tackles. I think 14 or 15 sacks, something crazy like that. But his 2019 numbers were pretty similar too. So I think in 2019 he was on the verge of really having a breakout year.
You're firmly in the rotation with Kwity Paye and Josh Uche, Carlo Kemp along that defensive line. Speak specifically to those relationships. I've talked to Kwity. He is such a huge fan of yours and speaks a ton. Speaks really highly of you. But let's start with Kwity and the relationship you had with him playing in that season for sure.
Yeah, that was the first year. I was there my freshman year with Kwity. We were both backing up. Him, Chase, me, Rashan. But then sophomore year, we both. Chase, Rashan left. We moved up, and that was something that we kind of came up together.
My junior year and his sophomore year, that's kind of when we started to get a lot more playing time. That's when he became the starter as well. So for me, it was great because then we started to fill each other out on the field. And then the other teams were just like, oh, well, we know Kwity played last year, but there's a new Aidan guy, he's kind of new in scene and whatnot. But when they started game planning, they couldn't really run away from either one of us because we played both sides and whatnot. So, it was a great junior season. Our senior season got cut short, but that junior season was amazing for us.
Here's the funny thing about those two guys. Both of them are fired up, going to practice every day. And there was a quiet competition every day between those two guys. They'll say no, but those two guys got after it every day and were trying to outdo one another in a professional way. But that I just remember the two of them. They'd be talking about their craft and getting ready on, hey, in this rush I'm going here. My first steps here, in all our twist game and so forth. But quietly, one was trying to outdo the other every single day, without question.
It was really cool to have, it's always great to have a dominant defensive end on the other side of you. And our relationship really grew. Even talking football, outside of football, that's, me and Kwity were it's just great having him by my side for that season. And sophomore, then junior year we were together, but it got cut short a little bit with the 2020, my injury and stuff. I wish we could have gotten, I told him, if he came back my senior year, he would have loved the defense and I know he would have thrived, and I know he would have, blew it out of the water. But
Kwity comes back, you got a job. That would be dangerous.
I know,
that would be dangerous.
It would be lethal. But no, I'm glad he left the way he did, and then he was a first round pick. So and then even to go with Josh now too. Josh was so dominant in practice. He was one of those guys who was taking reps in one-on-ones against like Caesar, and then against some guards, against the tackles, and he was just killing everybody. And he is so good, like, with his technique. So I always tried to, watch him and try to put a little bit of him in my game because he was so dominant. And and now he's doing great in the NFL. But those guys, we've had so many good pass rushers at Michigan. I think we're becoming pass rush now. Definitely in the argument. Just for the amount of first round draft picks and amount of talent we've had at that DN position in these past few years. Especially Frank Clark, Taco. You got a long list of guys. So, building relationships with those guys and having them early in my career, it's just really good for a guy in my position.
Kwity was also rare in the weight room, right? And his combine drills were insane. I think we had an injury. We weren't able to see his three cone, but it was this infamous 6'3" something. Yeah. Do you remember at all seeing that and training for that kind of stuff? What was that like? Because I think he is similar to you in that change of direction stuff was kind of his calling card. Yeah. What were some of those experiences like?
Yeah, Kwity is he is a freak. I'm convinced Kwity could not work out for about 3 months and he could still do about 25 reps of 225. He is just naturally strong. And the amount of weight I've seen him put up in the weight room and how fast he is, how agile, he's got it all. So I think that's why he's having so much success in the league now.
I want to start with the Iowa game. The Iowa game is really that 2019 season where you break onto the scene. I think you had 7 total pressures, 2 sacks, and you're going against a legit NFL caliber offensive line, right? Tristan Wirfs, the future first round pick, Super Bowl winning offensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alaric Jackson's on that offensive line. It's a very, very talented Iowa offensive line. You still dominate. And you're one of the few players too, because going back and watching that game, watching Kwity, watching Uche, they don't have that much success against Wirfs. You are one of those guys that's able to beat him on that inside move. I'm not sure if you remember it specifically, but it was. Talk about that game specifically, and maybe just the preparation going into it. Right? What was that like, and all that?
Yeah, that game, I remember going into it, and you hear so much about Wirfs and those tackles. They were so talented on tape. You watch them, and they were just locking dudes up. And then I walk out there for the game. I look at Tristan, and he is the biggest dude I've ever seen in my life.
He's huge.
Obviously, I've seen taller tackles, but his arms are they look like they're inflatable, and his legs and his calves. I'm just looking at him like, are you real? Are you like a prototype of something? What are you? So, I had a lot of success that game. It was definitely my day that day. It was my first my first time that I've really kind of taken over a game, I think. And I remember I got my first ever Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, I think, and that was pretty crazy for me. Yeah. And I think the success that I had in that game, especially against those talented tackles, that's when I really knew that I was like, I think I can be a really good player at the next level, especially if I'm doing a lot of the stuff against NFL caliber tackles.
The post game with the Hutchinson family. What was after that Big Ten? After the Iowa game, it had to have been probably the better dinners you guys had.
Yeah, I don't remember it specifically, but it was definitely a good dinner.
They all blend together. They all blend together.
I know, because we've had so many post game dinners, but definitely after that one, it was definitely a good one right there, just because I had my first taste of big success, and I think my dad was very happy too, especially that I was, that Iowa had such a good O-line that year. So that was definitely a good dinner.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Life is full of twists and turns, stress changes, grief, moments of growth, and moments where we feel like we're taking a few steps back. BetterHelp Online Therapy is here for the twists and turns and will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional therapy done securely online, and the service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can make it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp is a great way to show up for yourself and invest in your well-being because, well, you deserve some inner peace. Visit betterhelp.com/hutch. That's better, H-E-L-P, help, and join over 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Special offer for Hutch listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/hutch.
Staying in 2019 now, Penn State is another really big game for you, 6 total pressures, and that's another really good offensive line. You're kind of hitting your stride here with the Iowa game, the Penn State game. Yeah. Was anything changing for you, whether it would be like feedback from coaches or just like even other players on that team like leaning on you, right? I could see with the Iowa game and the Penn State game specifically, players probably starting to lean on you a bit, right? And see you as this leader and see you as this guy that actually, is helping us win these games. So I speak to maybe some of the change you felt there. Yeah,
I was definitely developing as a leader for sure, but I was so young at the time. And
19 years old,
probably,
right?
Probably just turning 19 right before that season because I got a August birthday. But I was young and I knew that. So, my whole goal was to not really say a whole lot, but just lead by example. And that's something I did at a young age a lot. Especially my sophomore year, you talk about me gaining steam. I have the Iowa game. I start getting some good games, putting them together. But, I was learning so much. And that was a big learning moment. You can see even with my pass rush, I look back on it and I was changing it up every week. It was a little bit, looking back on it, it's definitely one of those learning moments, and that's how I got to where I am today. So I am grateful for that. But definitely that whole season was, if you look at week 1 to that last week, I was a completely different player.
What weight did you play at that season? Were you a bit bigger than 216?
Yeah. So 19 with Don's defense, I was probably 275 maybe.
Because he played you on the inside a ton.
Yeah, it was because in 19 we had Kwity and Josh on the edges, and it's like it's hard to take one of those guys off the edge. So he would put me in the middle just to find ways to put me on the field because I was a really good player. But we had really dominant edge rushers that year.
We're in Don Brown's defense, and because of some of the packages that he wanted to put out there, Aidan played from head up over the center to a wide 9 and everywhere in between. So it was very interesting to see, they'd get the speed package, they'd get Kwity and Uche on the edges, and Aidan would get, over the center. And Aidan's goal at the time was, I realize why Don is doing this, but I want to be that guy that's on the edge, having a two-way go on the tackle. And that was his goal. He realized that was his, his role right now in the scheme as a young player was to be that inside guy. And Don said, at one point, Aidan was the best inside, pass rushing guy that he's ever had.
Then the Bama game comes through. And that is a tough game for the University of Michigan. It's a tough game for you as well. I think you had 0 pressures according to PFF in that game. What were some of the takeaways from playing Bama, right? You talk about you talk about college football and like the glitz and the glamour that comes with that. Like playing Bama is different, and you have this opportunity in a bowl game to do that. Going into that game, where's your head, and also what were your takeaways from that game?
Yeah, they had a really good offensive line.
Oh my goodness,
and very good. So a lot of first rounders. You had Leatherwood.
Wills, I believe.
Wills, and then Evan Neal was a guard at that time. Going into that, you hear about the whole SEC, all that rah-rah stuff. But, I've played the SEC a couple times now, and I don't think I've won a whole bunch of them. But, SEC, Big Ten, I feel like they're pretty synonymous in my eyes, and especially with some of the people that I played, I mean, there's talent everywhere. So I never really saw too much with that, but Bama was a great football team that year, and we had the lead at halftime, 16-14, had the momentum, and we lost that game in the second half. But we almost beat them, which was cool. I wish I could have beat Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide, but we didn't.
What do U.S. News, PC Magazine, and Popular Science have in common? They all ranked Simply Safe Home Security as the best home security of 2021. In fact, U.S. News just named Simply Safe the best home security of 2022. Simply Safe has freed me from worry and giving me peace of mind while I'm out traveling or visiting teams ahead of the draft. Simply Safe protects your whole home around the clock, 24/7, every door, window, and room. It's backed by the best 24/7 professional monitoring in the business, ready to dispatch police, firefighters, or EMTs to your home. Simply Safe is less than $1 a day, and you can set it up in around 30 minutes, and it's always simple to use. There's never a long-term contract. You can even try it for 60 days risk-free to see if you like it. If you don't, send it back free of charge. There's nothing to lose. Simply Safe protects over 1 million homes in the United States alone. Check it out. You can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/hutch. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off with interactive monitoring. Go to simplysafe.com/hutch.
You wrap up Bama, and you're going into the offseason knowing you had this first full year under your belt, right, of playing like a significant snaps. You're developing as a leader. You're developing as a player.
Yep.
This is obviously before COVID hits. This is like sometime in January where you're having these kind of thoughts. What was your mindset then, obviously before COVID hits and impacts a lot of decisions you had to make? Where was your mindset, and what were your kind of expectations going into the following season?
Yeah, I mean, I was so excited to get going, and I can remember for that spring ball that got canceled. I was so excited to get better, and I lost a lot of weight too. I think I was at like 65 going into that spring ball and going into that season too. But I was so excited to get better in spring ball, and then it got canceled with COVID, and I mean that whole year was a little bit of a dumpster fire for Michigan, and I wouldn't say for myself, because I think it was a year that was necessary for me to grow, but yeah, it was definitely a tough year for sure.
What were the conversations like, immediately after that Bama game, going into the offseason, before obviously what's going to impact with COVID? Yeah. What were those conversations like with the players, right? Because you guys had to realize what you had coming back. Like, you had a lot of talent coming back, and you were entering your second season being a full-time player for Michigan, along with a lot of other talent, Kwity, et cetera. I'm sure there had to be high expectations going into that year.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we had a bunch of guys coming back on defense. I think on the D line, it was me, Carlo, and Kwity that were we were captains. We got elected captains, and then so we had a lot of leaders everywhere on that team. And I thought we were going to do something really special that year, but then it got cut short, and a lot of weird stuff happened in between. But before that, though, I thought with the guys we had coming back, I thought we could really do something. And
you were cutting weight. You sound like you said you were going 265, expecting to play full time on the edge, right? Playing full time opposite of Kwity Paye, just wreaking havoc, man. And then this thing, COVID hits obviously in March. March Madness is canceled. The NBA is canceled. This whole a bunch of things are coming down, and your dad's impacted, obviously working in the hospital. What were some of your early reactions to COVID-19 and all of that stuff impacting sports and your family for sure?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever heard about it was when we were in our team meeting, and Coach Harbaugh canceled our trip that year. We were supposed to go to Costa Rica.
That's right.
And we're all sitting there. He was like, yeah, there's this thing, COVID going around, so we're going to have to cancel our spring trip. And we're all like, that's just an excuse. I mean, they just don't want to pay for it, or we're done taking trips now. So we were all pissed. And then, months later, we're in the thick of it, lockdown, quarantine, and we're like, oh shit, what is going on? And and then with my dad, being on the front lines and dealing with that, especially in the thick of it. I know it was hard, especially just with the volume that was in the hospital, with the amount of people, and I was definitely affected by it too with the season, and even with my dad and all that.
So what was your perspective of the season's going to get canceled, the season's coming back? How much in communication were you with Michigan in that time, and what was, it had to have been just a very strange offseason to prepare for the season, because you didn't know if you should be training, you didn't know if you should be seeing anybody. Had to have been tough.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really know with the season, with it being reinstated, but I mean, they didn't know anything either. Like, we were all just waiting for the NCAA and the Big Ten to say something. So I mean, I was working out at Barwis's gym for kind of a little bit later, but I mean, I was in there for months just working out, and you don't really know when the season's gonna get going again. So I mean, I was working out for so long, and I was working out so hard too. Like, I was in the best shape coming back to Michigan in the summer in my entire life, because I was working out so hard for months. So I mean, I was super excited for the season, which is why I was pushing for it so much, is because how good I felt. And and then it got canceled and reinstated, and then we had it, and then I got hurt, and then the whole little domino effect.
So you come back, right? The season's officially back on. How many workouts or practices did you have as a team before you're even on the field playing games again?
I think we were in camp for about 2 months.
Oh, okay.
Because we didn't have any pads on, but we were wearing these little visor shields, but like, we were kind of going full speed though, but not hitting that hard. But we were running everywhere, and that was for 2 months. So it was a very long camp, and it felt like, just because we were practicing, but we had no idea when we were going to play our first game. So it was always, that whole year was so like dependent on other people making decisions for you. So you never really knew what was going to happen. And you go in, correct, I was talking to your dad, and you're going into this season, I believe, with the expectation that after this year, you're going into the NFL draft.
We had gone into his junior year expecting that if he had the year that we thought he was going to have, that he was going to come out. So we said, you've got to play this like this is your last game in the big, and obviously COVID threw a wrench in the entire thing. But Aidan, this is potentially your last home opener at Michigan. This is potentially your last game at Indiana. And this is potentially your last Michigan State game. So we were full bore that if, we wanted him to be fully ready, that if, he got a high first round or a significant first round grade, that he was gone.
Talk about those conversations you had with your dad and your family, and what the mindset was going in.
You're talking about going into the season?
Going into the year, right? Going into the year, you're expecting to go into the 2021 NFL draft after what's supposedly going to be a healthy full season.
100%. Yeah. I had in the 2019 season, 2019-2020 season, I had this good year. I think I had like 5 sacks when I was a sophomore. So that was good. It was a good foundation. And then my junior year was kind of my year. It was my year in my head, thinking I was going to have a good year, then I was going to declare for the draft and, obviously go out early. But, in my head, I was thinking I could be a first round draft pick if I'm able to produce and play at a high level. And, that was the original thought in my head for sure.
And you start the season, 2 really impressive games. I think it's Minnesota and Michigan State, and you're feeling good, right? 2 games in, it's going to be an abbreviated season with COVID, but you're feeling good. What was the, you got some games under your belt, feeling 100% healthy, feeling 100% prepared. Were you still on that mindset that you're going to go into the NFL?
Yeah, so those first 2 games, I was definitely playing at a high level. I just wasn't producing a whole lot. I didn't have any sacks in those 2 games, but I can remember I felt like I was getting to the quarterback super fast, and I felt really good. But it's hard when you're not getting the stats, and sacks are such a tedious thing. You kind of need. It's based off everyone around you, the play call, kind of the offensive play. Like, there's so many factors that go into a sack. So they are very tedious, and something that I wasn't really getting those first 2 games. So, but I was playing at a high level. So, in terms of the NFL and sitting there, it could have gone at that point. I was thinking, I could come back, I could declare, it definitely will be a decision for the future.
I know this is going to be kind of an emotional moment of your story, but the Indiana game, you play 6 snaps and you get hurt. You before we even talk about the severity of the injury and the rehab process and all that stuff, you get hurt. What does it feel like? What's immediately going through your head? You're on the ground. You're not an off-injured player, right? This is a new experience to you. What's immediately going through your head once that injury hit? Because it was under pressure, right? And I think it was an incomplete pass to the left sideline, and I think you're on your back to start, and you're kind of like you're down, ankles hurt. Yeah.
So right when I start that game, I'm feeling really good about how I'm playing and my pass rush, and I think Penix was there, and I got to him on one of the snaps before that, and so I was feeling really good, and then on that snap. It's a little RPO play action kind of deal, and I beat the tackle, and I'm going after Penix, and I thought I was about to get a strip sack, but right when he threw it, I just hit him, and I grabbed him, and I rolled over, and but my ankle got caught underneath me when I rolled, and it was kind of an awkward thing where I'm behind him, I grab him, I kind of twist and roll, ankle gets caught, and looking back in hindsight, I could hear a snap, but you don't really, but you don't really I didn't really know what it was in that moment. So I'm kind of sitting there, I'm breathing really hard. It didn't hurt at all.
Oh wow!
I mean, obviously I was in pain, but I think that shock that was kind of going over me, with all the adrenaline. I mean, I didn't really feel anything, but I was breathing really hard. You got all the coaches and trainers above me. And I'm just like, hold on, let me catch my breath. I don't know why I'm breathing so hard, but just chill for a little bit. And Coach Harbaugh asked me if I tape my ankles when I'm down there, and I said no, I wasn't taping my ankles that year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and but I talked to the trainer after. He said it wouldn't have changed the result of the injury. So it gave
Harbaugh immediately like, "What'd you do wrong?"
that was one of those Harbaugh moments.
That's
for sure.
a classic Harbaugh.
Yeah, everyone's quiet. I'm sitting there. He goes, "You taped your ankles?" I was like, "Nope."
Dude, that's incredible.
That was like one of those classic Harbaugh things. And I get up, I'm walking off, and it still kind of hurts. So I'm like, I must have just sprained my ankle pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so I get up.
You walk off on your own power,
100%.
on like a fucking broken ankle.
Yeah,
it's insane.
yeah. At the time, I didn't know I broke it, so I'm just sitting there. I thought I just sprained my ankle. A little weird, when you're walking and your ankle sometimes falls like that. I thought that's kind of what happened. And then I get to the little medical seat or whatever you
hop
call
on
it.
The table, yeah.
The table, and the doctor is pulling at my ankle, moving it, and then he does this one movement, and it's like I can tell it's moving a little too easily.
Yeah, too much.
And then he looks up at the trainer. She's like, "We're gonna need an X-ray on this," and I'm sitting there. I'm like, there's no way. I just sprained my ankle. It's like nothing happened. So I'm walking. Then after that, I walked all the way to the X-ray machine. And as I'm walking over there, my ankle is just progressively hurting more and more. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, am I actually hurt? Because I'd never been hurt going into that. Any time before that, majorly hurt.
And it was seemingly a nothing burger play. It wasn't like, his leg got trapped underneath him. You could see it. It was one of these things that you watch on film and just have to turn your head. You didn't even know what happened to him. And you see him not being able to get up, but then you see him walk off and you're like, oh, okay, he's going to go to the locker room. Not going to be 100%, but he'll be all right. And then he doesn't come out. And then he doesn't come out. And then you're like, this isn't right. And remember, this is COVID. There's nobody in the stands. It's me and my wife, and we're just sitting there going, why is he not coming out? Why is he not coming out? And then we look down, and the trainer walks up because there's nobody there. He just walks right up into the stands and says, come with me. And at that point, everything in your entire body, even when I say it now, it still happens to me. Everything just sinks to the floor, and you're like, oh God, what just happened?
And so I'm sitting on the X-ray table, and it's really just a trainer, a doctor, and that was it. And they get the X-ray. I'm sitting there, and the doctor comes in, and she says, "Yeah, you're done." And I'm like, "Okay, well, when can I go back in? At what time is that?" She said, "No, you're done for the season." And I just literally started crying, like bawling my eyes out. There's just a lot of emotion, and thinking back at that season. And I tell you about the amount of work that I put in. That was probably one of the hardest I've trained in the off season going into that. And I felt so confident about my body, about what I could do. And when you hear those words, it just hit a little bit different. And they wheelchair me over to the locker room. I see my parents cry even more because it's like when they come over there and you can tell they're sad. It just brings it out of you a little bit more.
We thought he sprained his ankle because he walked off the field. So we really didn't know anything. And after like a half hour, I start texting him and I'm like, what is going on? Like, you usually would have your phone by now. You've been in the locker room forever. And then Chris, we saw the doctor on the field and Chris said he knew right away, and I feel like I was in a fog from there. And then when he said about breaking his ankle, one of my best friends, Pete, she's bawling. I'm crying. I'm walking up the stairs in the fog to go out and around to the locker room. And that, we walked in, it was quiet. And there was one chair in the middle of the locker room and he's just sitting there and his back's kind of to us. And all I could hear is just how upset he was.
We're expecting to go to the NFL in a few months. And now everything's been, just thrown on the floor and messed up. And my wife and I just went in there and just hugged him. Didn't really say much. And everybody got their tears out. And, we sat there for a couple minutes and it's just the Hutchinsons and in the locker room by ourselves.
It was definitely rough. It was a lot of tears that day, but, what came from that is definitely the most important thing.
I think, I can't even fathom that situation, right? To prepare for something and then kind of lose it out of your own control, right? On something that you didn't even feel like was initially a big injury too. Right. Like you're walking back and all that stuff. So you mentioned that you're bawling your eyes out. Are there like specific thoughts in your head on, are you immediately thinking about how you're going to get back and the recovery process, or is it really just like all black for you then?
Yeah, and the one thing I was thinking of is like, I remember telling this to my mom while I'm sitting there in the locker. I'm like, this is going to be hard. Like this shit is going to be hard. Like because I already know, I've seen guys in the training room with the rehab process, with the surgery, all that. And that's all I was thinking of. And I was feeling bad for myself in that moment, knowing that, I was going to have to go through all of that. But, it was definitely, for a couple days there, I wasn't really thinking about setting goals in that moment. I was really just I was just feeling bad for myself and thinking how hard and long rehab's going to be.
Were there any words exchanged with your dad or your mom? I think your dad mentioned his part of it being like a lot of silence, right? Just like sitting there talking about it. Were there any like, what were they saying?
Not a whole lot. They just walked in and, we all just started crying together in a little huddle at my locker in Indiana. And, not much was said. It was pretty quiet. And,
not much to say.
Like they know, I know, like there's nothing that they can console me with because I just broke my ankle and there's nothing you can do about it. So,
oh my gosh, this is season ending, but you have to know too, this was such a weird season. Right? It was, what was going on was just so crazy. We had just gotten done with this whole Big Ten protest. They all of a sudden, started playing. They had 6 games, right? Things were starting to go south for everybody. Kids were getting hurt right and left. I just had a weird energy vibe. And I just thought, you know what? There's going to be a silver lining. And that's what I kept telling him. There's going to be a silver lining. It's going to be okay. And then we watched the rest of the game from the tunnel. And I just kept saying it. And I saw what was going on. And just like so many things went so south for that team.
What was the aura like when Aidan went down? I know he was one of many injuries in that 2020 campaign, but I speak to the impact of that injury on the program.
Well, Aidan is on the field just in terms of athletic ability and production. You get a lot out of him. What he also provides is great leadership. And in a season that, you don't know if there's going to be football, it's canceled, and all of a sudden there is. It's Big Ten only games. They're shuffling the schedule. He provided a lot of guidance for the young players, a lot of leadership on the field. He is always a guy that brought the energy, as I mentioned before. And you lose a player like that on the field, in the locker room, in the meeting rooms, and it's a huge blow to the team. You have a leadership void. And at that time, we didn't have a quarterback that had stepped up to lead this team. You didn't have a lot of other individuals that were, seniors or fifth-year guys that were great leaders at that time. Great players, but not necessarily great leaders. So you lost a lot when Aidan went down in that Indiana game.
Your teammates come into the locker room, though, I think in halftime, right? And they're all kind of crowding around and don't realize necessarily that you're out for the season yet. What were some of those initial reactions? Who were some of the players that you remember talking to first? And when did Harbaugh find out? When was the team finding out? Because it was you and then your mom and your dad. But then after that, Michigan, the rest of that team finds out soon enough.
Yeah. There's that really powerful video of all my teammates coming up to me, and I'm sitting there on the chair with the boot on, with the crutches, and they're all coming up, dapping me up. A lot of my, like Carlo, Kwity, a lot of my old teammates. And I don't know when they found out because I wasn't with them on the sideline. But, I remember I walked back to the locker room while the game was over. We lost, and they were all changing. And one of the DNs came up to me, Luigi, and he said, when are you going to be back? I was like, oh, I'm done for the season. He's like, what? He was just like his mind was a little bit blown.
Man, going back to that 2020 time frame where that dude went down, man, it was tough because around the time where it happened, it was kind of a series of unfortunate events that was going on, whether if it was losing to Michigan State or whatever it was, the season was tough and we was in a battle. And having our lead guy, our head soldier go down the way he did, man, it hurt for sure. But our mindset at the time, dude, and it was so tough, but just man, this is a tough blow and we can't replace this guy, but we got to go in and get this season for this dude right here because we know how much it means to, how he play and what he bring every day to Shem.
When he broke his ankle against Indiana, the life of the Michigan football team, it went right to the locker room with him. They were never the same. They never played with the same intensity after Aidan. And that's the fault of the other players. But it's also a testament to how powerful of an individual Aidan Hutchinson is from a leadership standpoint.
So I don't really know how they found out or who told them, but definitely having that support from my teammates in that moment was it was huge. And being able to go back and watch that, it's really special for me to see that and to see has definitely it goes to show how my teammates feel about me for sure.
Losing Aidan they really did kind of lose their fire, and you don't want to put it on one person, but he was contagious in 2021. There were other guys who started picking it up and playing with that similar emotion that he has, but he's the guy who generates all that, and he's on the sideline. I mean, he's got an ankle injury. He's got to have a surgery, and they really did. I guess you could say they imploded after that for sure.
Coach Harbaugh's initial reaction was, "Did you tape your ankles up?" But after that, what was some of those conversations like with him?
Coach Harbaugh is very matter of fact, and he came up to me. He's like, "I know you're going to get through this. You're a really good player, and I know what kind of person you are. So I know you're going to get through this." And and that was that. Mm-hmm. Coach Harbaugh is kind of like that sometimes in that way, and he is very confident in me and my abilities, and he knew with how I was going to attack rehab that I was going to be back in a flash.
Yeah. Then the road to recovery kind of happens quickly. I think your dad said it was 24, 48 hours, and you're immediately locked in on trying to improve, trying to attack recovery with reckless abandon, and then also you kind of make this commitment to coming back, right? How soon after the injury are you thinking about coming back to Michigan for your senior year?
Yeah, so I would say it took a couple days after that injury to finally kind of recenter myself and focus on the future and focus on rehab and setting goals for myself and really focusing on that process. But I think in my head, I mean, obviously you flirt with the NFL a little bit, but in my head I wanted to come back, one, for my team, and two, for myself, because I told you about, how good I felt going into that junior season and how I thought I was just going to explode and produce, and I just didn't do that. So I knew you give me one more year and I'll have the opportunity to do that. And it was never really too much of a choice, I would say, in terms of going back or going to the NFL. We talked about it a little bit, but it was always going back.
And a lot of that is because of the injury, right? A lot of that's to come back with, to prove to yourself that you could have this season that you prepared for, right? But some of that too was unfinished business in the rivalry department, right? I mean, you entered Big Ten Media Days with one goal in mind. What were those initial thoughts like?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to, like, it just made sense all around the board. Like, I know if I went to the NFL, they projected me from like 30 to 70. So that's like late first to like late second, early third. So it was kind of a big range, and something that I didn't really feel, I knew I could definitely be better than that. And I knew I could be, a top of the draft kind of guy, but they just didn't see it yet. So, definitely it all made sense to come back, and especially with the rivalry. I mean, you talk about, unfinished business right there. I mean, it was a drought. I mean, it was 10 years at that point, of no wins. And then, that was definitely the goal, one of the goals of coming back for sure.
In the rehab process, I think there's a handful of pictures, like you're on the couch and just like a full leg cast, and you can't move. What were some of those? Do you remember some key turning points or stories in that rehab process where, like, you felt like you were finally getting back, right? Because there had been some levels of just, like helplessness, right? Where you just can't do anything. You can't get up. You can't do anything for yourself. Do you have any like those key moments where, like, in the rehab process, you first start walking again and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it took a while though. I was probably on that couch for about a month or two, and it's so weird because
you had surgery, right?
Yeah, I had surgery, and I mean, I was just talking to Jabo about this with his recent injury. It's like one day you're sitting there, an elite athlete, change of direction. I mean, you're running fast, like you're doing it all, and you feel great, and you don't think about anything. And then the next day, I mean, I can't get out of bed on myself. I mean, it's hard to go to the bathroom on one leg, and I'm in pain everywhere. So it's like that just made me realize, how much gratitude I have for my game and for playing the game and for having this healthy body that I'm in. I have so much gratitude for it, and that's something that I really learned when I got hurt, because those simple things that you take for granted, they're not so simple anymore.
How did you manage to stay close to the team in that process, right? Because I know it had to have been tough for you as well to not be at those games and all that stuff. At what point were you getting back into those meetings and still like seeing the guys?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really got back into the meetings because I mean, I got the surgery like a week and a half later, and I think the meetings were online on Zoom, so I did pop into a little bit of them, but watching them on TV was the weirdest thing, because I'm sitting there and I've never really not been a part of a mission. I mean, I've traveled to every game. I've been to everywhere. And then I'm watching that first Wisconsin game, and I'm like, this is weird. This is too weird, and I hated it. Sitting there with my foot elevated, just watching them, and it wasn't easier watching them have a tough season too, watching them lose. They lost to Wisconsin and then had the Rutgers game being down 17-0, winning in double OT, and then losing to Penn State. So it was so hard watching them, and because you want to do something so bad, I wanted to strap on the pads and affect the game, but I mean, I was sitting there pretty helpless.
So the season ends, your rehab obviously continues. What does that look like specifically after the season, and when do you honestly start to feel you're 100% again, right? Or is it going into those spring practices? When do you start to feel like you're 100%?
Yeah, so I had surgery November 17th, and then it was kind of they projected my rehab to be about 4 months, and it was 4 months. I got back around March 11th or sometime around that time, and they were in spring ball at that point. So my whole thing, I wanted to recover as fast as I could and get on the field as fast as I could. And so, when spring ball hits and, my kind of full recovery is ending, I was thinking I was about to get in spring ball, get in the action a little bit. And you know, I literally had this whiteboard in my room that I had the dates of March, and I was crossing the days out. And once we got to that last day, crossed it out, walked into our football building with this big ass smile on my face, just for them to tell me that you know, I'm not doing anything.
Oh no!
When they had told me I was. So you know, I was only doing one-on-ones, but they wouldn't let me do any competitive periods, no team periods, none of that. So I was pretty pissed at Coach Mack, because he's the one that shut me down for spring ball. So we had some arguments for a pretty long time, but you know, I guess I'm thankful for it a little bit.
You have to be now.
I guess a little bit. I mean, I still would like to do it a little. Part of me does, but yeah.
You know, the energy around coming back, right? And this unfinished business and all that stuff. Like, did you like immediately step into this leadership role, and like were teams leaning on you for that? And did you feel that, right? Like when you come back, you're coming back from injury. You're coming back as this leader, a guy that everyone desperately missed the previous season. Kwity's gone. You are the guy on campus. What was that feeling like, again, going into that offseason where maybe you are being held out of some of these contact drills by Coach McDonald or whatever, but did it feel different? And what exactly, speak specifically to the goals that you did have? Yeah,
it was incredibly different. I mean, because you look at that last season, we lost a bunch of dudes after my junior year, moving on to my senior year. And so, you know, walking into those winter workouts, I was the guy that had to be the leader, and that definitely took a different level of focus and determination, I think, in my mind, in terms of being a leader, because it's not easy at all, and because you have to be on, you have to be consistent at all times, and that's the hardest part about it. So being on that team, and you know, we were pretty young all around the board. So I knew I was going to have a big voice. You know, if there was some BS going on, I have to cut it out. So
Jack Harbaugh was telling me a story. Jim's dad at spring football. He said this kid Hutchinson has really become the leader. He couldn't participate because of an injury. So he wasn't doing contact drills. So he was just out there running around doing his getting in shape stuff. But when the offense did something well, Aidan Hutchinson was over there with the offense, patting him on the back. Way to go, guys, slapping them on their rear. And when the defense did something good, intercepted a pass, he was running down the field and he was congratulating the defensive players and the defensive backs. He was building that team even in the spring.
It was definitely a new responsibility that year. And it's hard. It was hard doing that, not practicing in spring ball. You know, I was just watching everyone, coaching everyone up, and I was bringing some crazy energy to those practices because that's all I could do. And I was getting all fired up watching them in 9-on-7, just getting after it. And I was just trying to be the best leader I can be with the ankle and with all the stuff that was going on in my life.
You're listening to Hutch, a 4-part podcast series brought to you by PFF and presented by Cash App. This podcast is hosted by Austin Gale, myself, and executive produced by Tyler Mowbray and Aidan Hutchinson. David Sophomore, PFF's Director of Communications, is responsible for all interviews in the podcast. Video editors are Mike Quinn, Tyler Sobchik, Ryan Richardson, Ethan Hornsby, and Stone Rochelle. Radigan Sports, specifically Ryan Henderson, Jenny Cronin, and Alex Radetsky, made this all possible. Mia Hutchinson on as a content producer, and Melissa Hutchinson as a creative assistant. Sponsors are Cash App, Simply Safe, and BetterHelp. Sponsors lead, Connor Price. Thanks for listening.